Okay. All right. So we talk about, like we recite in our refuge and bodhicitta prayer, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So that's talking about two purposes. My own purpose is to become a Buddha, but not just so I can hang a shingle up and go, hi, I'm Buddha. In fact, anyone who does that, run the other way. So the reason is to, of course, we can benefit people in the meantime and animals and beings, we do that all the time. However, to ultimately know, like a Buddha knows exactly how to benefit them so that they themselves achieve Buddhahood. This is what we're talking about. So it's developing the wisdom that enables us to put an end to suffering for ourselves and for ourselves, first of all, and the causes of suffering, which is already a huge thing. And it's said to be this wisdom, realizing emptiness, is the greatest purification because it purifies absolutely everything, cuts the whole root of what we call cyclic existence, samsara, lifetime after lifetime of, suffering aggregates, as I say. And so it's the last of the 6 perfections, and we haven't really, in this presentation, gone thoroughly through the 6 perfections. That will come later when we look at the bodhicitta module way down the track, number 10. We're on number 3. But just to give an overview, a context, this is what this module is about. So the wisdom realizing emptiness, or how things actually exist, not how our mind elaborates on top. So even realizing the fact that our mind tells story on top of what is there is itself, developing this wisdom. It's not something we would normally think about out there in the world. So in the Bodhisattva's way of life, the first verse of chapter 9, Arya Shantideva says, all the previous teachings that were taught, in other words, all the previous perfections, 1 to 5, like we say here, the practice of giving and the other perfections, practice of generosity, giving is number 1. So all those previous ones were taught to develop wisdom. So what it's saying is we have to accumulate vast merit, which we do through our prayers and practices and being of benefit to others, through practicing what we call the 6 perfections. And then it's not and then at the same time we're developing the wisdom, but it comes as a result of that. So there's a presentation of grounds and paths, and it talks about the bodhisattva, which is the Buddha in training at various levels, and there's 10 grounds. So you progress through all these perfections and perfect them, actually perfect them. So that's when it comes along, It's but meantime, we can get a handle on it, think about it, and think, how can I relate this to my life here and now? So we've been looking at relevant verses in the Foundation of All Good Qualities. So you have the gold book there. So this is as I mentioned, like the 14 verses goes through the whole graduated path to enlightenment in a nice sort of succinct 14 verses. So on page 140, it's the 5th verse down, and that relates to this topic. It says, once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects, in other words, pacified distraction based on our senses. And so we could say in meditation, I've completely honed the power of concentration and correctly analyze the meaning of reality, which is what this topic is about, through analysis, through using logic and reasoning. And we're going to look at some of that just in brief this morning. Please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight, so that once we have that understanding through our analysis, and we then, when you have an aha moment, what we say is you sort of keep your mind held on that, which is the calm abiding, so that it sinks deeper. So as we think of examples, or as I give examples this morning, you could think, oh, how could I contemplate that, and or something similar in my life that I can relate to make it, you know, really start to, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, even saying the word emptiness, which is not nihilism, it's not nothing, right? Just to be clear, chips away at our suffering existences of samsara. So even we don't understand, it's just have faith that it's starting to chip that away. As I said, even starting to contemplate these concepts, which is not something we ordinarily do in the world. Certainly not something we learn in our regular education system, which is fine because it's a Buddhist presentation. So it's like there's two sides of a coin. One we call, like here, conventional truth. Everything exists, right? And the way that it exists is said to be dependent origination. We'll go into that. Everything's dependent. That's an easy one at some levels for us to get. And the flip side of that, what we call ultimate truth, is that if everything's interdependent, then the emptiness is not a voidness, the emptiness of existing independently, because you can't be both, right? You can't have both. So let's just think about it like that. So the best way to start is with thinking about conventional truth, dependent origination, dependent arising, interdependence. I mean, that's a concept in the world we all get. You know, COVID showed us a lot about interdependence at a very, you know, we talk about it at a very subtle level. Well, that was a very hidden phenomenon, wasn't it? Until then it was not so hidden. And no need to tell that story. We've all experienced it. So when I was freshly ordained, I was asked to give a presentation at a Buddhist youth conference on, I think it was a workshop anyway, on emptiness. And I was like, you're joking. I didn't say that to the organisers. I went straight to my teacher, Geshe Sampton at Vajrayana Institute. Guess what? They want me to teach about emptiness. And he gave me this wonderful little succinct teaching about dependent origination, dependent arising, everything being dependent. He says, talk about that. Went, okay, now I know how to go. It's just like, emptiness, what's that? I don't know. We've sort of had this weird idea in our head, or yeah, anyway. So looking at it from dependent origination, just in brief. So we say all things exist in dependence on different causes and conditions coming together. Like for us to be born, you know, there had to be mum and dad, or I don't know, these days you have test tubes and all sorts of things, you know, or whatever. But anyway, there's got to, generally, conventionally, there's a sperm and ovum, right? And then from a Buddhist presentation, it says, yeah, not just that, also our subtle mind stream, you know, the mind as well. So yeah, the parents provide the material, physical aspects, and then but the mind we bring into that equation ourselves. And I get that because my brothers and my sister and I, anyway, I can see there are things that we are all good at because we had the conditions coming together in our household to be a musical family, say. But then there are all different, you know, we've followed different paths, different careers and so forth, different things we're all good at. And you know, we can see that in our family. So if it really just came from mum and dad, there'd be a lot more in common, wouldn't there? And we have our individual features, all sorts of things. So I'd say it's not random. There are specific causes and conditions that come together. So it doesn't just like, I don't know, it just sort of happened. It's not without cause. That's why it's saying causes and conditions. For everything that exists, something has to come together. You know, for the cup, you need the clay and the person, the potter, or the machine in the factory. And then it gives the shape, and then you need the colors, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things have to come together. So, which is having described that, is those parts, you know, those parts, the clay, the paint, the firing, the potter, all the parts that make it, and the handle, you know, that make it into a mug. And then we say the most subtle level at which things exist is that on top of what's there, we give it a name: cup, mug, Mary, John, or so forth. So there's always this debate, you know, a baby's born and it's not yet named. Subsequently, the baby, let's say boy, is named John. When did John start to exist? Anyone want to hazard a guess?
Conception.
Well, was it John at conception? Or was it a potential John, a baby? A potential John, we might say, because the name John hadn't been decided then. It was baby, whoever. So,
But that's suggesting that John is in of itself. I think when does John exist?
yeah, when does John exist? So what we, yeah, it's trying to get at how we label something, and then we have a concept of that, and then, oh, John, I know John, and then we have our story about John. That's what we're trying to see, how our mind works in that construct. So we name, impute everything. We label something, and then we relate to it as such. And if you want to get really complicated, an ant would see this as, I don't know, the biggest mountain it's ever seen or something. You know, it wouldn't say it's a cup, whatever. So dependent on what, if that was truly cup and nothing but cup independently, so this is what I'm trying to get at, independently, nothing to do with me labeling it that, then all beings in all existence would relate to it as that. But we say we accept it as human beings in the world. This is why it gets, you know, into deep philosophy. You know, we say that it's conventional, it's accepted conventionally in the world. No, it's not going to be refuted. Nobody's going to say, no, it's not that, right? So we do convention. This is the conventional existence, conventional truth. Yes, it's a cup, it's a mug. All right. And then we sort of stretch our minds a little bit further to get at, well, what is it that doesn't exist? Okay. And we call this the object of negation. This is where we start to use analysis. Okay. So this analogy here of the thief, hopefully this helps. You know, how it relates to our understanding of emptiness. So what we're really trying to get at is, I've got a sense of me, I, that then I hold onto. And even though we know we're changing moment by moment by moment all the time, I still have this sort of fixed idea about myself. And I might limit myself because of that. Oh, I can do this and I can do that, and I'm this and I'm not that, and whatever. So one time, it's in the film Dalai Lama Renaissance, I think it's really useful, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, sometimes I catch myself thinking of myself as a Buddhist monk. And you think, well, what's the problem with that? You are a Buddhist monk. So we could say that what His Holiness is saying, if I think Buddhist monk, then I think, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. You know, like before I ordained, I said, oh, when I ordain, I won't be able to duck under the barriers at the airport anymore, you know, because I've got to, supposed to be, you know, contain my energy and look a certain way. And people, they don't know what you are, but they know it's something spiritual, when you're upholding, you know, you're upholding their faith in something like that. And then I got told, oh, you know, of a nun who does indeed duck under. But I stopped doing it, shall I say. Well, my body won't let me do it these days anyway, so it's a moot point. But it's that thing of, oh, okay, I'm this, I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do that, or I do this, or I do that, or I'm this, I'm that. So what it's saying is, free up our mind, you know, don't be so fixed about our potential and who we are, right? And so just to be clear, it's not about whether we exist or not. We all exist, we're all here. I'm not here in a vacuum, and nor are you. We're all here. We all exist. So it's not saying whether things exist or not. That's why it's not nihilism. It's not just a void. It's an idea that how is it that this I exists? Is it the way I think it does? So this analogy of a thief. So if we believe there's a thief in our apartment block, in our house or whatever, and because of that, we're afraid, isn't it? If there's one in our neighbourhood, you know, you're afraid, oh, I might get robbed. True, right? Especially if they're in the house. And we've never seen this thief, but we're convinced they're there. Say we say apartment block. Maybe it's not in my house. Maybe it's in the apartment block. And then someone comes along and says, actually, there's no thief. We've checked out. There's absolutely no thief there at all. But we're still convinced there's a thief. You know. So we go, we need to search for the thief. So we need to know what it is that we're searching for. So we have an idea of what a thief looks like, isn't it? Maybe we say it's somebody who doesn't belong there in the first place. That would be, you know, when and they don't all look like, you know, got those bandit things on or balaclava or whatever. But when I was at Vajrayana Institute when I was in Newtown, and then someone came in and they said, oh, I saw somebody, a woman in a catsuit climbing in a window, you know, up high, and said, what are you doing there? And she turned around and said, what do you think I'm doing? She was the thief, right? She was classic thief outfit, I guess. So there was a thief in that situation. But so we have to establish exactly what the thief looks like in order to be able to search for them. We need to know what we're searching for. That's what we're just using this as an analogy. And so once we're sure, then we search for them. You know, we search everywhere. Believe me, if it's a thief in the place, we do search everywhere. And find, oh, actually, there's no thief there. There was never any thief there. There's no thief there in the first place. And so this analogy is like finding no thief there is like finding no, we say inherent existing, independently existing me, you know. Now, my mother said that 4 years old, I was fiercely independent. Now, as I got older, I realized I couldn't have been independent. I might have been fierce, but I wasn't independent because look at it, you know, there's no way I could give myself shelter, clothes, education, feed myself, anything like that. She just meant I was stubborn. So there's no such independent self. I think this is why in the 70s, I never, you know, I was involved in the women's movement, but, you know, friends of mine who went and, you know, sort of we're opting out of society and we're going to go and live in these women's lands and so forth. And it's just like, you can't actually opt out of society. You are dependent. I mean, you can set yourself aside to some extent, but you can't, you know. Just look at, what is it, Prince Hut River Province? Or, yeah. Now I think it's just a touristy thing, isn't it? I mean, they've got their own postage stamps, but who's going to recognise them? You know, it doesn't matter now. People don't send letters. Anyway, you know what I mean. So we search for them and we don't find. So that's what we call the object of negation, the thief in the house or so forth, or this self-existent, independent, fiercely independent I doesn't exist. And the Buddha said never existed in the first place. So but it's interesting when we see, I'll just stay on the thief story for a bit longer, a couple of stories, the thief analogy. I was staying with a friend in Melbourne and it was like the middle of the night and suddenly there was a bright light shining through the bedroom window from the street. Next minute, there's a knock on the door. It was the police and they were shining one of their searchlights into the house because they said there was a thief in the house. So immediately you get an image and immediately you've got this, there's a thief in the house, like they could see we weren't harboring a thief. We weren't like, oh yeah, come in, you know. We're like, what? Well, there was no thief in the house, but the supermarket down the road, maybe it was open late hours. Anyway, he'd stolen something from there and done a runner. But what he'd done was gone down over our side gate and down the path. And why our house? I don't know. At that point, the police were catching up with him and he needed to skedaddle, whatever. And so suddenly you've got this image of the thief, right? And your very fixed idea of this person that you never saw anyway. So this is what the Buddha's saying. So just one other story on that. So this is from Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, for Bongko Rinpoche. So Geshe Ben Gunyal is a sort of well-known figure that people, there was a few stories about him. So before he saw the error of his ways and met the Dharma and eventually became a Buddha, Geshe, he was a thief. That was his job. So to speak. And so then when he's a Geshe, he's invited to this family house and he's in the kitchen and everyone else goes out. And even though he's given up his thieving days, he's still quite attracted to things like tea. I better watch out. He could feel, his hand was going towards the tea caddy. And then he yelled out at the top of his voice, "Stop, thief, thief, there's a thief," and grabbed his hand, "Thief, thief." And everyone came running, "Where's the thief?" "Here, here's the thief." And they're like, right, okay. All right. So in that case, you could say there was a prior thief who was no longer a thief. So there was some basis, but, you know, we elaborate a whole thief on top of the hand going towards. So if that can give you a sense of, we elaborate stories on top of what is there, what isn't there, is what we're talking about, okay? And then we look at this in terms of using logic, using reasoning to try and get a sense of how that thief or that I does exist. As I said, it's not that we're not here, we are here, but that sense of myself that I have, that story I tell about myself. So we'll give it a go, going through these points, see how we go. So first of all, as I said, we've got to know exactly what we're looking for. And the first point, Nagarjuna, Treatise on the Middle Way, said, you analyze these different points. And the first one that he presents is not being the aggregates. When we say aggregates, we mean body and mind, all the aspects. In the Heart Sutra, it says no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. So that's what we nominate the aggregates, everything that comes together to be the person. Right. And if this self that I hold on to some idea of, and you can see immediately I go here as if this is the self there, but if you're opened up, that wouldn't find anything. So not being the aggregate. So there's 5 of them: form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness, right? There's 5. And so if it were the aggregates, as Chandrakirti says, it would be like there would have to be multiple selves, because there's 5 aggregates, so maybe 5 persons, or maybe sometimes we do feel like we're multiple selves. That can be true. But we know that, we're only one being. And also, if it was such that it was the aggregates, there'd be no need to use the word self. You could just call the aggregates, So to say the self's aggregates of self's body and mind would be like saying the aggregates, or the self. That's a bit harder to get, but it's a point to contemplate. Anyway, on the idea of there'd be multiple me's, I find myself one's quite enough to deal with. And then, okay, well, if it isn't this body and mind, then maybe it's something different to that. Maybe it's separate from that. Maybe, you know, I've got the sense of I out there somewhere floating around that's not part of me. And if it was that, well, it could be, say, you know, because if it's not in here, then you investigate, is it out there? And so this example that's used is just an example that, say you've got a goat, a sheep, and a bull, right? And you eliminate the goat and the sheep from that, and you go, there's the bull, right? And so that's the same that we do. We eliminate what isn't me, and then, well, there it is, which is what you do after. If you're eliminating all the 5 aggregates, because you're saying it's separate to that, then you go, is it my form? Is it the shape of the body? Is it my feelings, you know, of pleasure, displeasure, neutral feelings? No. Is it my consciousness, discrimination, perception? No, because it can at times be any of these things, but it's more than that. Is it my compositional factors? In other words, all the other mental factors, all our afflictions, all our virtues and so forth. Is it? No. Is it consciousness? Is it my eye consciousness, my ear consciousness? So this is ways that we investigate and saying, well, that wouldn't work. Because if it was different from all of those things and there was still this sense of self that wasn't those things, then it wouldn't have the characteristics of these things. But yes, we do label this me on top of these aggregates. Is your brain hurting already? Making sense? Yes. Yes. Anyway, so perhaps then, before I go on with any more of these points, we'll do just a short meditation to try and get a sense of this for ourselves. I hope this is going to work. Well, if it doesn't, you can tell me. Okay, so just sitting comfortably so that you're well supported by the ground, the floor, the cushion, the mat, the chair, having a solid foundation on the basis of which to engage in meditation. And bring your awareness into the space of your body and just take some deep breaths to settle more and more in a state of stillness, relaxation, and alertness. Settling into a comfortable posture. Okay, as you're sitting there meditating, you can question yourself. What am I doing now here? Oh, I'm meditating. So while you're sitting here meditating, there's part of your mind that investigates, like a scientific investigation, searching this I that is meditating. Where do I feel that sense of I? Is it within the body or outside the body? Just get a sense of where you experience this sense of I. And so if it's difficult to even get a sense of that, you can think about when a strong emotion comes, like somebody falsely accuses you, say, of being the thief in the house, and you know you didn't do it. And you get a strong sense of I. Where does that experience arise? Just watch that strong sense of I arising when you think, I'm not guilty, I'm not the thief. So if there is a strong sense of I within the space of the body, is it in the head? Is it in the heart? Is it in the center of the chest? Is it in the legs, the arms? Just investigate. Where do you feel it is? You know, maybe gut, we talk about gut feeling. And if you feel it's there somewhere, just meditate to see, well, is this true? Is it findable? So go through them, top of your head to the tips of your toes, looking for this sense of I. So maybe it's not in the body, but maybe it's in the mind, because we talk about all these different states of mind, mental factors, emotions, and so forth. Check out the nature of the mind. It's got its parts, it's just like the body. It's made up of moments, past, present, future. So where does this real I exist? In the past, in the present, in the future, in any moment of mind? And if it is that you can't find a real strong sense of I inside your body, inside your mind, think, or maybe it's outside of my body and mind. After all, we say my body, my mind, my this, my that. Is there some separate entity? And that wouldn't be the I who's meditating, would it? Because it'd be outside of our meditation experience. How does that work? Okay, and then whatever conclusion you've come to, just stick with that as your experience. It might be a state of confusion, which is good. Not having the result. Okay, when you're ready, relax, open your eyes. Now, maybe it's the first time you've ever thought about even investigating this sense of self. Maybe it's not the first time. Did that help you get a sense of how I hold on to this sense of me? A little bit? Anyway, something that we can meditate on again and again and just see, oh, because we're changing moment to moment. So the next time you do it, you'll be like, have a completely different experience too. And you think all these different experiences are valid. So it's a hard topic, especially when it's new. So any questions so far in relation to this topic? We don't even know how to formulate a question, maybe. Can be. Okay.
I'm just thinking about physical things like you're talking about the cup before.
Yeah, physical things, phenomena, emptiness of
The
phenomena.
labels that we
Yeah.
give. So earlier I was thinking about from young children, we give them books, and here's a photo, this is a,
Yes.
this is a bee, this is a cat,
Yeah.
this is a all conventional things that we all agree on.
Yeah.
If I was to, instead of calling by your name about the person here, it takes so long. So
Exactly. It takes so long to give the full description. And even the full description is another set of impositions, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing this long description about somebody.
Yeah.
To be here forever.
Exactly. And so for communication, of course,
but
we're going to use that.
Yeah. But about the cup, I was thinking about, okay, if you take the handle away, is it still a cup? Because I do pottery at home. I'm thinking,
okay.
Sometimes I've made something and I've taken it off, and I've taken off too much at the base. It's got a hole in the bottom, so that's not a cup. So it has to be an enclosed form that can contain something. But it could still be a cup without the handle. When is it not a cup?
Well, that'd be wonderful for you to just contemplate as you're doing your pottery, whatever you're making. At which point does it become cup?
Yeah.
And when is it not a cup? So just not even answering that, just observing and contemplate, you know.
Because I was thinking, how if it didn't have a handle, it's a vase.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's individual.
Except, you know, when I went to live in Paris in the very early 80s, and you couldn't go, and you probably can now, buy a mug like this. Those bowls.
Yeah.
You drink out of bowls, right? I would call it, well, they do call it bowls as well. Of course, if you go to a coffee shop, you'll get one of these. But if you go to, and so that was interesting. It's like, I was looking for one of these, unfindable, which was interesting because they could say, oh, my concept of what is suitable to use as a drinking vessel has a handle. Not necessarily so. And if we can accept that, then suddenly wars cease because our mind's much more fluid and accepting and open to, can be this, can be that, so it can function like this, can function like that. You know, it doesn't have to be. So this is a whole idea of freeing up our mind from all our rigid concepts in that way. And it's quite interesting investigation. Even not coming to the conclusion, that's okay. More than okay. Just not giving up on the investigation. Okay, so we've ascertained, I think, that it's not all of these bits, it's not separate to all of these bits. And then it says not being the base of the aggregates, or we say, it says the example here is like a bowl for curd, suitable to contain that. So in the 12 links of dependent origination, you know, the wheel of life, this one is called name and form. The form is in the shape of a boat, and there's 4 people in the boat. And what that represents is the body and the other 4 aggregates, which are mental, you know, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness, and they're like sitting in the boat. So you could say it's a suitable vessel container, or the basis to be called person. That's how they say the basis. There has to be a basis to be called, labeled person on top of this combination. But it's not that basis. It's that basis is suitable, like the bowl is not the curd. You get what I mean? It's suitable to contain that. So these are objects of philosophical analytical debate. And it, well, it's saying not depending on the aggregates, which is tricky because we've just said if there's not that basis, then it has to depend on the aggregates there to be labeled. That this sense, my sense of self, this feeling that I have of myself is, you know, is in a sense, you know, it is depending on the aggregates, but that self is the way I perceive it again is not as it exists. So it gets really, really tricky here. And I mentioned in the meditation, very brief meditation, but not possessing the aggregates as if there's some owner out there, you know, that is some different thing. And so the examples that are used here in the text is like a person possessing a dog. Now, a dog and the person are two separate entities, aren't they? So saying myself and my aggregates, it's again coming back to it would be separate, or as the same entity, like a tree possessing a trunk. The trunk is part of the tree, it's not the whole tree. So these are ways that you say, well, where does the part, when does the part become the whole, or does the part become the whole? Which is what Chandra Kirti then added in, this idea of being the shape of the aggregates. So it was like I would say, okay, do a drawing of yourself, right? And then you look at a drawing and say, that's me. Well, this is me. That's not me. That's a drawing of me. So there's a shape, but we have that sense, again, convenient for communication. But, and one of the Geshe said, it's like the danger of this one, in a sense, we do have a sense of an image of ourselves. I was thinking earlier, it's like having an image of, you know, the favorite photo that you want to put on Facebook to project that image of me. You know, that's the one I'm happy with. Or, yeah, or doing a drawing. And one of the Geshe said, it's like we do a drawing of a lion and then we get scared of the lion that we've drawn. In other words, we would create an image of something, like the image of the thief who is not there, and then we're afraid of this, that we've created that image. So these are just things, ways to investigate how our mind works. So either the shape or the collection, all these bits coming together. Right. Okay, so why do we investigate this? Apart from it, some interesting philosophical analysis. Why do we investigate this? Because what we said at the beginning is to get at wisdom that's in sync with reality. So that because we misunderstand a lot of things, misconceive like other people as well as ourselves and so forth, and create all these elaborate stories, and then either we like the person or the object, and so we elaborate all their deliciousness and, you know, want to be their friend, and but we elaborate all of that until, say, you like them so much that you end up being a couple, and then you move in together, and then you start to see different things, and then often it all falls apart, tragically, because the two minds are fixed in their expectations of the other, and there's no flexibility, you know. I think it was Queen Elizabeth talking about Prince Philip, or Prince Philip talking about anyway, one of them, or both of them, talking about their relationship and saying, you have to have a lot of tolerance, right? So you have to have, you could say, a lot of flexibility. You have to have ability to shift and acceptance and so forth. So, but if we do like that, either we're attached to, and then all our desires come up, greed and so forth, or craving, which only is ever going to end up in suffering at some point, or we have an aversion. We think they're the ugliest thing we've ever seen, and then they're, you know, we don't like the way they walk, talk, do anything, and then we elaborate on that side. Whereas other people don't see them that way; they're their best friend and so forth. So we've just got to investigate. I create that for myself, as the Buddha said, not them creating it. So you can't blame them anymore. We have to look at what's my perception. So, and then on the basis of that, we create karma that then causes us more suffering. So that's the whole, I guess, presentation in a nutshell around that. Okay. with the collection of the parts, my favorite example is years ago, there was it must have been a long time ago, there was an ad on television, and it comes back to your point of when is the pot, or the cup when you're spinning the potter's wheel or molding very carefully. And anyway, this ad was for a car, but what you saw was all the bits and pieces rolling off the production line, like it was a, what do we call it? Graphic, animation. And there were like ball bearings and springs and wheels and all the bits and pieces. And eventually you see car. And I thought, that's perfect investigation of this whole topic, saying, oh, it's dependent on those parts, but at which point when they all come together do I label that car? Lots to think about. All right, so yeah, I just want to use one other example of emptiness because I think it's good to, anyway, this is an example that for me works because it's from my experience. So we have the Heart Sutra teaching in the Heart Sutra in here, page 77 is the Tibetan. Good luck with that. But page 79 we start, and this teaching, we're not going to go through the teaching, but it says explicitly that teaching is about, it's about wisdom. So therefore anything that says it's about wisdom is about emptiness, right? About this topic of emptiness, the wisdom realizing reality as it is, not as our mind elaborates. So when I lived in Sydney, I was part of this women's interfaith network, and every year we'd have a different topic that we'd share on from our faith perspective, and we'd learn from each other and share with each other and so forth. And this year it was your favorite prayer. Normally I'd pick the dedication prayer from Shantideva's Bodhisattva's Way of Life, just that generic version that we use, so that, because everyone can connect with that and relate to that. But this time I decided the Heart Sutra, right? And so I'd done, you put together a whole presentation, and I'd done that and put together the presentation. So the morning of the meeting, it was on the computer. I think I had a couple of computers there in the end, but it wouldn't print off. Wouldn't print off from that one and that one. I tried various methods and so forth, and I thought, there you go, emptiness. It's there, but it's not there. So I just had to go and present an emptiness of the Heart Sutra itself. That worked for me in some weird sort of way. It certainly made me get less serious and just laugh at the whole situation rather than, oh, it's ruined my whole presentation when I put so many hours into it. Blah, 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 blah. It is what it is. So this is what it gives us, some sense of freedom, and that's what we want, some sense of freedom, some sense of liberation. And we can all experience moments of that right now. That's why it's good to look at examples that you see around you where, what our mind tells us gets challenged by what's around us. See, it's not as you think, see? And one of the phrases that really works for me too is, because of emptiness, everything is possible. You have to think, hang on, how does that work? Because emptiness means everything isn't fixed. If everything was fixed, we wouldn't change, nothing would change. You're just like, there's no possibility for change. And yet we know that's not our experience, moment by moment of our life and everything around us, everyone in the environment, etc. So because of that, everything is possible. That's why we're here as, Dharma, interested in the Dharma, wanting to get a sense of a different perspective. And this is what they say, it turns our perspective around 180 degrees, turns it totally around until you don't, as I say, you can't unsee. Once you've got that different perspective, it's like, oh, things aren't as I thought they were. In some ways, it's very difficult, as you can see. You know, I asked you if your head hurt in terms of trying to see how we get at this point. But it's said that when you get it, it's so simple, it's like laughable. Now, I'm not at that point, and just saying, thus have I heard. Okay, so liberation. So this is the basis of liberation, of getting totally in sync with reality, cuts through all those disturbing states of mind and down to what we call the root ignorance. You know, again, in the wheel of life, when we have that, I keep looking at that wall, waiting for it to arise there, because that's our instruction, put on that wall there. I can see it, but it's not there yet. But in the middle, you know, those three animals, the snake, the pig, and the bird, sometimes pheasant, sometimes rooster, people use different ones. And the root one is ignorance, and the ignorance is represented by the pig, to say this is ignorance, which is interesting, because even that you can challenge, because I've heard my sister, when she was raising pigs, said they're very intelligent beings. So there you go. But anyway, in this iconography, it's represented as ignorance. And out of the mouth of that, the tails of desire, our attachment energy, and aversion, our anger, hatred energy. And out of that, all the other disturbing states of mind come along. Like those of you, when we were looking at the first module, Mind and Its Potential, looking at all the different secondary afflictions and etc. and everything else that comes on top of that. But it all comes down to that root one. So if we can cut through that confusion about how things are and then realize wisdom, that's what freedom is. That's what liberation is. So even we may not, you know, have achieved that as a total sensation, we can have experience of that, moments of that sense of liberation. Like for me, when I was training as a Feldenkrais practitioner, and the guy who was the head trainer, I was helping him out, you know. I was on the committee, of course, and, you know, helping out and whatever. And he came up to me one day and called me over to do something. And I noticed my mind reacting in a negative way. And it's the first time consciously in my life that I remember saying, drop it. You don't have to react like this. And that awareness was liberating. I was like, wow. And that felt good. So there's a moment of freedom there, where the gap between the thought and the reaction, or even the reaction had started, and it's like drop the reaction, meant that I was then able to just proceed and do whatever it was he wanted me to do. That's what I was here to do. You know, that's what I'd offered to do. So just being able to watch the mind and drop the story, you know, is a great practice. This is why we in meditation, we use all those analogies of just observing what comes across the mind without following the story, to just create that freedom that I can, yes, I can respond like that, but I could also respond like this or that, or many ways. And being able to investigate those. Yes, Venerable Angela.
Like challenge, like a thought arises and you go, really? And you can challenge it, like if it's something negative that comes up.
You can challenge it, yeah.
Okay.
And even you can challenge whether it's whatever it is. What's a thought? It's a mental moment. So what we can also challenge is the way we make, like the drawing of the lion that we're afraid of. We concretize it, and that is that. I have the thought, and then I believe in that. Right? It is that. That's how it is. And then we have an opinion. We fight with everyone else. Do. True. That's how it works. Okay. Getting there. So we've got a rather long quote here from Lama Yeshe from Introduction to Tantra. Anyway, so before that, so we're wanting to develop this penetrative insight, as it said in the Foundation of All Good Qualities, develop that sharp, clear wisdom mind. So yes, we use all these points of analysis, which stretches our mind in a conceptual way, intellectual way, you know, sort of analyze this, reflect on that. But we want to get that to the point of having a taste of that little experience that we have, either in meditation or, like I've given some examples in, you know, just thinking about that. And sometimes, probably mostly, it's thinking about it subsequently, realizing what we're, oh, there I was able to apply that. Oh, there I was able to apply that. Not necessarily noticing at the time, but you can notice at the time. It's good. You know, some of the students at Vajrayana Institute said they'd go around, like we talk about dependent arising, you know, merely labeled by the mind. So they'd put in the kitchen, merely labeled kitchen, merely labeled cupboard, merely labeled fork, merely labeled saucepan, merely labeled. Okay, just to, you know, those post-it notes all around the place. Merely labeled, it's all merely labeled. But it does exist. And we do accept it is that. All right. So I'm just looking at which bit of the quote to start with. The wisdom is the direct antidote to all these mistaken conceptions. We've been talking about that, about who we are and what the world is really like. And that's a burden. And then, as Lama Yeshe said, this circle of dissatisfaction, this cycle of existence, we have created for ourselves. So we can't blame anyone else. You know, no one else is to blame for that. But we can be free of it. We can banish it completely. And if we do that, we experience freedom, space, effortless happiness that we presently deny ourselves. So just think about that. Anytime that you're experiencing that sense of spaciousness, it's the opposite to all this. So, and effortless happiness. You don't have to work at it. It just naturally arises. If you look at someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you know, and I've mentioned a few times Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu with the Mission Joy, you know, the movie Mission Joy, just totally lightness and happiness despite all the tragedies in their lives and so forth. It's not diminishing those, but being able to have approach them with an uplifted state of mind, not attached to it being like this and being like that. That's why I think, you know, His Holiness Dalai Lama, these meetings with the scientists of the mind and so forth, because if you think about it, scientific inquiry, scientific research is so fantastic, because it's like you're prepared to give up your previous held view. We've given scientific proof, well, a good scientist, shall we say, given scientific proof that that was invalid. It's exactly what the Buddha said. You know, if you can find anything I said is invalid, chuck it out, no problem. If you can prove it wrong. Nobody has yet, but if you can prove it wrong, chuck it out, no problem. So it's that freedom. So Lama Yeshe says, realizing the correct view of reality is not something mysterious. I like this bit. It is not a matter of staring up into space and praying for a glimpse of the truth. Okay. It's not the wrong view is down here on the ground, the right view is somewhere up in the sky. In other words, some heaven, you know, a heaven and earth thing, which are also merely imputed by the mind. He says, nor should we think that the wrong view dwells in the polluted cities in the West, while the right view is to be found in the pure air of the Himalayas. I have heard views sort of that would be in sync with that, you know. Interesting. I don't know if the pure air of the Himalayas is so pure anymore either, with all the mining going on and so forth. Although it was very pure during COVID, wasn't it? We saw those glimpses of the Himalayas that had been previously clouded over by pollution. So it's possible. It's possible here. So the right view is available anywhere, everywhere, at all times. Whenever we fix upon the idea that we exist in a certain specific way, we are hallucinating. Lama Zopa loves to use that word, hallucinating. So I think it's about page 75, maybe. 76, page 76. So this is a quote, one verse from the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, that when Lama Zopa Rinpoche is teaching, very often stops and says, meditate here on this verse, and say it slowly and meditate on that. And it's giving our sense of how things do exist, trying to get there's a whole series of examples here, a taste for that. So like a star. So how would we investigate like a star, how it exists? For a start, from my understanding, please, I'm no astronomer, so please challenge me on any of this. But by the time we see a star, it's already dead. But it doesn't appear dead to us, does it? We're bright in the skies, it doesn't appear as something dead. So we don't see it like that. And it's light years away, but we don't see that either. We see star in the sky. Yeah? And even twinkle, it's a twinkling star, because we've all learned the nursery rhyme, right? So it twinkles. And, you know, to the extent where these people who label, you know, buy these stars, buy a star, you can buy a star and put your name on it. What good is that? You probably even look at the sky and go, oh, now which one's mine again? Crazy what people pay money for. So a star, a visual aberration. So here the example is like a mirage. So because we know intellectually it's not that. It's not, you know, like in the desert, seeing water and it's just a play of the desert sand and the sunshine, or we see it on our roads in summer where that shimmering effect of the bitumen and the heat and so forth. And we know it's not like that, but in a way it's sort of like, it's insubstantial. It's not as substantial as we think. A flame of a lamp. So it's going to flicker, it's going to go out, it's impermanent. It's wavering, it's never fixed, the flame's always moving. This is why I could never figure out why, you know, people would use a candle flame to meditate on. It's just like, why would you want to do that? It was like, flicker, flicker, flicker. Anyway, an illusion. So this illusion is using a magical illusion. So the magician knows they're creating this illusion. Someone in the audience believes the illusion, but it's an illusion. It's not real. So it's trying to get an idea of how we perceive things to be real that are not, because remember when I was doing even when I was doing the Feldenkrais training, which was about the body, and they said that, you know, well, in that case, it was like the brain, because everything was about the body, seeks, you know, for things to be concrete, seeks that concrete contact. It is as soon as we make contact with an object that we create this sense of permanent fixed idea about it. A drop of dew, gone, evaporates in the morning, you know, or a bubble, same, you know, very fragile, impermanent. So we can think about our life like this. It's very fragile, very impermanent. It's not going to last. I've got this lasting, enduring sense of me, to such an extent that even if I think about future lives, guess who I visualize? Me, like this. Well, I'm going to make an aspiration to be ordained in all future lifetimes, but I can't conceptualize that differently than on this basis. You know, I don't know if anyone else can. Good luck with that. a dream, you know, that we believe is so real until we wake up and we realize, oh, maybe sometimes it's a relief, it's only a dream. But at other times I'm like, oh damn, the dream's gone. I'm hankering over the dream, and we know it's not real, right? So these are ways that we self-evidently know are not real, but we take things to be real. So it helps us to get a grasp on, how do I approach this? A flash of lightning, gone. A cloud. So we often use this analogy of cloud for the thoughts and so forth to show that it really is, what is a cloud? You know, it emerges out of the sky and dissolves back into that space. So like the thoughts in our mind. So there's nothing concrete, tangible to fixate and hold on to, because they'll just merge back into the space of the mind. So they don't have that solidity that we think they do. Of course, the fact that we can think means that we can think about all this stuff and use our thinking in a trained way to get a handle on it. So this is what Lama Yeshe says, it's not something mysterious, you know, we can all get this. And so then Lama goes on, every time we look at ourselves in a mirror, we have such fixed idea. How do I look today? Oh, I don't want people to see me looking like that. Like what? What is it we don't want people to see? It's a reflection in a mirror. And the reality is, whatever we see in that moment in the mirror, we're changing all the time. We don't perceive that change, but we're changing all the time. There was one story I heard where this couple, and the woman would say to her husband, so how do I look in this dress? Is it like, do I look too fat? And he thought, well, I can't lie because I'm Buddhist and I took those vows not to lie. So he thought, I won't, you know, he's thinking to himself, I won't lie. He said, darling, whatever you wear, you look beautiful to me. So he got around it. Whatever you wear, you look beautiful to me. Very skillful, yes. But we have these, you know, fixed ideas of ourselves, our abilities, and so forth, isn't it? Yeah. And if we have those fixed ideas, then we won't change. If we say, I can't, it won't happen. But if we say, I can, was it the little chugger train engine? Yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can. Gosh, I'm going back to preschool now, even though I didn't go to preschool. So, and our sense too of everything else is just equally deluded. You know, everything that appears to our senses appears to have something concrete, self-contained, separate to me, nothing to do with me. And yet what we're getting at here is it's how I experience those things on the basis of my senses. How I experience it is that it's something nice, something not nice, or something I don't even notice. And we're doing that all the time without even realizing that. Maybe sometimes we do realize it, like I look at the sunny sky and go, oh, isn't that so great? The sun's shining, you know, so I have a sense of, well, that's something pleasant to my eyes. And so therefore to my mind, and my mind goes joyful and etc. But it'd be different if I was somebody who was having maybe radiation therapy and I had to, oh no, the sun's shining, I've got to put up an umbrella, you know, different circumstances, different things. Okay, so it takes a lot of time to familiarize with this, a lot of training our mind using, first of all, thinking about how is it I think about this? What are some of the tools I can use to think about this? And then, you know, start to investigate more and more. Lama Yeshe says, just start by being a little bit skeptical about how you perceive things, and you know, maybe things aren't like that. Even that, it opens our mind to say, maybe things aren't like that. I mean, maybe they are, but maybe they're not. And, you know, start to investigate our views as just a momentary projection of my mind. In other words, in the next moment, I could have a completely different view. I could, if I had a very flexible mind, have a completely different view. So he says, it's better to be slightly suspicious of what our senses and our ordinary conceptions tell us, like the wise shopper, who when buying a used car, does not immediately believe everything the salesperson claims about it. A used car, you want it checked, you want an RAC to come and check it out and make sure it's all systems go. You want to ring up and make sure it's not a stolen vehicle or whatever checking up we do. So as you're saying, you know, check things out just like that. Okay. I'll just maybe end with this quote. This is a quote from Rinpoche, who was a student of Milarepa in Tibet. And he travelled to India and brought back all these profound teachings on emptiness. And they got absorbed into all of the lineages in Tibet. This is in the 12th century. He said, just this short quote, I have found the transcendental in the world. That's what I like, not somewhere else. As Lama says, you know, anywhere, anytime, any one of us. It's not some other heaven up there or somewhere else. In this world, in the world. And now delusion have no hold on my mind. So like His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, you know, yes, I observe anger arise in my mind. I observe it fade away 1 minute. I observe it because of having meditated since 6 years old, and now he's what, about to be 87? I think 87th birthday coming up very soon, 6th of July. So, you know, to the point of it not grabbing your mind and hijacking us on some emotional merry-go-round. To some extent, we can get a taste for that, a feeling of that, experience of that. And that's about as much as we can at this point in time. But we just keep working at it. Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes.
I think I missed what you said ultimate truth was.
Ultimate truth is the emptiness of inherent existence, emptiness of independent existence, emptiness of, so it's not empty, you know, nihilism. It's empty of existence. Because it exists dependently, we start with that. It cannot be independent, you know, it can't be without cause, it can't be without parts, it can't be without the mind labeling it. So we just apply one to the other like that and get closer and closer to understanding it. So we've done a whole presentation on the sort of sutra, Mahayana Sutra presentation of the path to enlightenment, which is what we're studying in Discovering Buddhism. And we've got 2 more weeks coming up, and those 2 more weeks will be investigating further by way of the meditations for this topic. Normally we do a day, but the way that that wasn't working for us. So for us altogether. So we're going to integrate that over the next couple of weeks into the sessions there. So that will cover off on those and give us a taste of some of the things that we've been talking about, not everything, because we'll get more in depth on each of these topics that we've lightly touched on as we go through the rest of the Discovering Buddhism modules. Okay. Alrighty, and I think I've mentioned, but to mention again, that on the 10th of July, which is our last day on this module, we'll be having a refuge ceremony in the afternoon. I've suggested 2 o'clock to give us a bit of a break so that if people want to stick around for that to have lunch, even if you want to stick around and just hear about it, or people can come along, take refuge for the first time. Because of that request being made by a couple of people, then we will have the ceremony. And then, but also you might just want to hear about it. What does it all mean? Just there's teaching before and teaching after. The actual ceremony is quite short. And also the centre is going to have a little bit of celebration of our wonderful DB group. So spread the word. And those who've taken the vows before can refresh them, I like to say. They've taken them before, but just to recommit, you know, which we might do on a daily basis anyway, but it's opportunity, okay, for everybody. So everyone's welcome to attend, Buddhist or not, or aspiring to be Buddhist or not, no problem. Okay, thank you very much. And dedication prayers. Some brief dedication here. So on page 16, under the Idam Guru Ratna, through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious body mine, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And long life of His Holiness Dalai Lama, page 19. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Page 22, for the long life of Kebje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You who uphold the subduous moral way, who serves as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjanath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Long life prayer for Tenzin Osa. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddha's teachings. O foremost and holy Lama, to you who are supreme, O Lama, please, please live long. Okay, thanks very much. Have a good week.